Good morning and happy Monday. I'm your host, Marcus Stalker D. This is the Euro trade still, but running at a new time. As you can see, I'm in another slightly different space because we're having a power cut because I live in the sticks. So yeah, they're either updating infrastructure or cutting trees. I don't know. Anyways, if you're here for the first time, I am somebody who's been trading for 18 years. 13 years out of that, I've been a prop trader. And I specialize in some of the more unusual products that you don't really see very well represented in general. So we're going to have a look at gold because I know a lot of people trade gold, but we're also going to have a little look at the energies markets, maybe even go over platinum, copper and silver, even though copper doesn't really have many releases just yet, and it's not quite cold enough for copper to start moving. So yeah, let's start with gold. Okay, so I'm using a micro here. So gold decided just to go into another all-time high. So let's start on a very large time frame since it is Monday. So we need to have that big overview of what is happening with the bird's eye development. Another all-time high last week. Does this thing have Mars as its destination? I don't know. Certainly looks like it. Anytime we have a little bit of a pullback, that's nothing but an excuse to get back into longs. So maybe that's something that we should consider as a strategy in general. So anytime you see maybe this bearish engulfing, they never really hold. You know, I went over quite a few of them just as homework. Literally anytime you have bearish engulfing, very soon the market shift point, which I call the conterminous line, where the two candles were kind of looking similar at one point, and whenever that market shift happens, so something rolls over, that is a conterminous line to me. Conterminous meaning common. So it was a common price point and then it broke to the downside. Well, they should be reactive if it's a true reversal, right? If it's not, then it means that it's just another opportunity to fish for more longs, right? Now, it's not quite that simple because we need to make sure that the trades that we take can definitely do what they need to do within the intraday time frame. And this is also why I look at Asia high, Asia low, or overnight high, overnight low when it comes to London Metal Exchange. That's going to be opening in about 35 minutes, so we can watch to see what they're doing. On the 4-hour chart, I can see that Asia pushed it higher. London went into its classic do nothing for 2 hours until LME happens. But one thing that is kind of standing out to me is the average daily range that was already exceeded during Asia. So that can be something quite relevant. Now, this is a little bit too early still. We'll see what LME wants to do with it. But since ADR high is exceeded, I would look for a pullback to look for longs. A couple of points where I want to look for those pullbacks. First one is VWAP. This is Globex VWAP, so the entire Globex VWAP at 38.23. And then we also have the edge of the distribution curve from Friday. I'm using COMEX for this purpose because I find that COMEX value tends to be pretty reactive. And interestingly, that is slightly lower down at 38.13. So I don't know whether this is going to be a good opportunity for a mean reversion down to that point, purely because we are at all-time highs. So one idea would be to stay out of the shorts and then just see how the price behaves before potentially seeing some buyers stepping back in. So yeah, Still bullish on gold, so we're going to see how that works out later on. But in case I'm wrong, I usually have 2 longs and 2 shorts. If I see a short opportunity, that will probably be something along the lines of reclaiming this ADR high at the right time of day. Maybe looking for a fake out for the first 30-minute of LME, so a head fake, effectively going the wrong way that the market eventually shows you that it wants to do. So yeah, that's still long to me. So don't necessarily want to fight that. So pullbacks, stay out of pullbacks, and then maybe see if you can catch it. Another option is that if we rotate all the way down to COMEX value, and then we accept that value, I might look for another pullback yet again to VWAP from the bottom part, from the back test effectively. So you break through VWAP, break through COMEX value high. That would give me more of a reason to actually go short. So until that happens, I don't really want to be picking tops on this thing. It's not a very good idea. So yeah, patience. I know that these markets, they just kind of seem to go one direction. Might look like they are quite easy to trade, but actually on an intraday time frame, nothing is further from the truth. Now, before we go into another metal, let's have a look at crude oil and RBOB, because there has been some developments over the weekend and I'm not really seeing them reacting to that. And the news was that Ukraine has now started hitting Russian refineries or something. So I expected to see longs stepping in, and maybe they still will. But as yet, I'm not seeing that. Now, the way I trade these two instruments is to use levels from crude oil, but then express my, express my views in RBOB, because RBOB is more lively these days, certainly. Crude oil used to be a great product to trade 2-3 years ago, but it seems to have gone through a personality transplant. And to me, with the way I want my trades to behave and how many ticks I should have inside them, crude oil is just not cutting it, because I would have to be catching it almost at like the extremes and then getting like 70 to 80% of the range. Whereas the way I like to do it, I like to capture 70 to 100 ticks, maybe even 120, 160. But that usually represents only about 30 to 40% of the overall range. When that starts to be skewed, it means that that product is no longer very suitable for what I'm trying to achieve. So I've moved away from crude oil, but I have not moved away from RBOB and heating oil, which are both derivatives of the initial commodity. So they are very, very correlated. And I don't know whether anything else has quite the same correlation. Maybe NQ and ES are pretty correlated in that respect, but this is a real commodity and these are real derivatives. So something that actually exists in the world rather than just cash settled products. All right, so first things first, let's do a bird's eye view. These are all old levels from last week. So I mean, it's still a range, and I did say if we ever got to 65.70 that I wouldn't be opposed to doing some shorts. It seems that that is exactly what's happening here. But let's do the levels for today. Now, with crude oil, overnight high and low, and then the liquidity sweep, that's not really much of a thing. I trade crude oil, RBOB, and heating oil during NYMEX. I don't really like it for this time of the day, but I thought I would give you an overview because it is one of my products that I quite enjoy trading. All right, so weekly high, still at the same point. We do have a weekly low that is not the main low, because we have another one much, much lower down, closer to 54.50. And we just kind of rolled into a new contract. So we rolled into November, that's CLX, and also RBX and HOX. So they're pretty pretty cool sounding products at the moment with that suffix. But yeah, not much else. So just establishing another range. Surprise, surprise, eh? Who does what? Crude oil establishes ranges. And at the moment, it is going into an attempted evening star formation. But because today is not over yet, and this is not its main session, I would be a little bit, careful with that. All right, let's see where the NYMEX NYMEX. So NYMEX value high is basically around 66, 65.98. So a little bit higher than it was when I was looking at this. That's good enough. And NYMEX value low, 65.25. This is the coordinates because on this laptop it's just easier to type than to drag things around. And that is not the average daily range low for today, even though it was, I think it was on Thursday whenever I was looking at this. ADR high also not in the same spot, so ADR high today is sitting at 65.85. Yeah, 65.85. There it is. And ADR low today is sitting at 64.10. I'm going to need another line for that. And by the way, once I'm done with this, I don't know if Tyrone is still here. I was thinking maybe we can do stats for you because you submitted it last week, but we ran out of time. So I thought maybe we can kill a bit of on-air time by doing the more stats chat with D. Okay, so another thing that I want to check for crude oil is the options, because options tend to be pretty important for this particular product. So I'm going to recycle one from my other platform here. So just give me 1 second. Now, Pete the Process Parrot and Grasshopper Hat are at home, so I won't be able to do too much puppet show. I sometimes like to do here. Let's see if this is going to reload. Okay, yes. So we have a put support from the 0 DTEs at 65, and we already bled through it. If I go into the intraday developments, I can tell you that London already decided to make that reactive. So if you see how the price behaved, so I'm going to put a white line just to delineate the options level there. And you will see how these areas can be very, very good for either continuation moves, if we're in a negative gamma environment, or as a stabilizer. So this is a put support. And the price initially went through it, then retested it, and then carried on down. So this is what I mean when I say I use them as orientation points, especially if these calls and puts are not really located anywhere that makes sense. So it's not necessarily hitting the outer edge of value. We're not exhausting the range yet. And then you're just looking at it and going, so now what? Well, you have these GEX levels. So GEX levels can be excellent indicators of what the price is going to do. At the moment, I am going to guess that we are in a positive gamma environment. I haven't looked at MentorQ website just yet, but you can kind of tell that if you are either above or below HVL area, which stands for high volume level. But it's effectively an area where the gamma flip happens. So if you're above it, technically you're in a positive gamma. If you're below it, technically you're in a negative gamma. It's not quite that simple because HVL can actually be a bounce point as well. They can just get to that point and decide that they're not going to get it further. So HVL, put supports, core resistances, and then GEX 1, 2, and 3 are the levels that I really focus the most. Even if there's no GEX 1, 2, and 3, sometimes whatever GEX level you have around the same price area that the price is currently testing, that can also be used by the market makers to hedge. So that, like, whatever the highest concentration of the open interest at current prices, we can use that for orientation. And rather than having an assumption of what should happen, you just need to observe how the price action behaves around it. And when I say that, I don't mean use 1 minute chart, 30-second chart, but just stick to like 10, 15 minutes at least, right? And then just see whether there's a reversal or maybe a pullback to that level and a continuation. Now, this is where price patterns, along with reading order flow, can actually be pretty useful. Shay is asking me whether these levels are transferable to equities too. Absolutely. Equities, ES and NQ, they all have their own options. With equities, you also have these ETFs that have yet their own options chain, but they're all highly correlated. The only product that doesn't really have any options activity is YM. However, Mentor Q kind of gets around it by taking in the correlated products and then creating something that's called blind spots. And they can be a good alternative. But generally, ES and NQ, they have their own levels. They have their own levels, so you can just use those. You don't need to convert anything. So in that respect, it's very, very good. All right, so despite what the developments are in Ukraine and Russia, I mean, for now, this looks very bearish to me. We have a GEX 3 coming up on crude oil, right around 64.50. Outside of that, there are minor GEX levels lower down. Now, GEX 1 and 2 are much higher up. They're at 66 evens. That's GEX 1, and then 66.50. So if we find that there are some news that start impacting this market, I wouldn't be too surprised to see this turn around at 64.50 and then to carry on going higher back towards that top of the range. Because what typically happens if London takes something down, unless it's some kind of an outlier day that we can justify, usually NYMEX reverses whatever London has done. And this is true for about 70% of the days. Now, what time of day that reversal happens, that is a different kind of worms. I like to look for those in a 90-minute time zone for these energies markets. And that is after 9 a.m. Central and all the way into the Euro close, which is 10:30 Central. If you're over in Europe and in England, the times for that will be from 3 p.m. all the way up to 4:30 p.m. Now, natural gas is a slightly different timing. It can actually go into a reversal during New York lunch hour. But yeah. Cactus Leo says, I trade SPY options, USDTs. Great. Awesome. So you're very familiar then with the GEX levels and open interest in the options chain and everything. Right, let's have a look at any chat developments here. So I am reading the chat on my phone, so give me a give me a little bit of a leeway today. Cactus Leo says, when changing your time slot? I should get the final confirmation later on today. Now, obviously today we had to do it this way. It should, like, don't quote me on this because we still have a couple of legal things to sort out. But it should, fingers crossed, be done by the end of the day. So, this is a great time slot for me. It's a great time slot for you as well. And it obviously makes much more sense because LME is opening in 20 minutes time, so we can actually watch it, we can spend some time doing analysis, and then if there is an opportunity, we can strike at the right time. So hopefully you will know by the end of the day whether this change of time is going to be a permanent thing from tomorrow. But for now, it is kind of still up in the air. Okay, so I don't know. I got the information about Monday very, very late. So initially we sorted everything out on Thursday, and it was like, okay, well, we're definitely going ahead with the change of time. And if you look at the TV guide, it even says the new time. So I looked at that, I looked at the schedule, and because of the power cut, I was like, well, I have to book a room somewhere. One of the business owners kindly in my area has allowed me to use one of their spare offices, which is absolutely amazing. Like, this would never happen in London. So I love living where I am right now. It's a much smaller kind of community, and I love the feel of that. So this is why I'm away from my regular office yet again. So last week was my dog getting spayed. Now I'm just bumbling around offices, and sorry, just randomly. Hello. All right, what's happening here? Let me have a look at chat again. Okay, and by the way, how is the stream? Like, is it okay? It should be, I'm hoping it's all right. Because the internet is okay here. Obviously, it's not as fast, but I'm not trying to jam a whole bunch of platforms in here, because I know that we're already a little bit heavy on the stream. But yeah. Okay. All right. So with me being still undecided on crude oil intraday, but having the bearish outlook from that weekly time frame, I'm, as always, going to be very patient if anything does pop up on crude oil as well. Now we can have a look at natural gas, since we are on the energies markets. So natural gas, I haven't looked at it in a while, actually. So let's start with the weekly. Bit of a distribution going on the weekly chart. So put supports were around 275. Is that still true? Is that still true? And we're also in November. Let's see. What does the option change say? All right. Is there anything down there? That's a little bit far out now for this week. So unless they go into like a huge bearish movement, we have some levels that are further up. And right now I can see that the put support has actually changed for the slightly longer dated options, and it's sitting right at 3 evens, $3. So where are we right now? No, that is not it. NGX, that is 3.21, 216. Okay, but a weekly chart, remember this basing. That could be a sign of a creation of a new demand area. Now, it's just an assumption at this point, but certainly interesting that we are heading into, the fall or the autumn, as we like to say it here, and yet we are pretty flat. There's like literally no movement. There's been some clear out, like these wicks. Let's hypothesize here. So if this is a distribution of some sort, so we've gone into sideways movement, this price action that has a lot of wicks on the weekly, it could mean a clear out of some of the existing orders. Now, if the price starts moving through those, generally it will mean that there is not much there to stop it. And because we're so low, there is not a lot to say against longs in natural gas. So If anything grabs my eye today, I may want to long natural gas. We have a low volume node on the weekly chart. If I just look at this last week, all the way above the wicks. So that's something to be wary of. So if we get to 3525 and we pop into 357, 3.6, I would expect to see yet another little reversal intraday. But once that's done, there's really not much to stop it until we reach the next high volume node, which is at 377. So it's a little bit of a different read than some of the other instruments. And energies markets are tough to trade traditionally. So usually equities traders find them nearly impossible. They kind of look at the energies markets and they go, oh my God, how can you trade this? And the reason why I like it is because these energies offer you frequently trades on both sides. So it's not just a single direction market. Whereas with equities, you can sort of argue that once you've caught a good trade, and especially if it's on the long side, you can just stay in on it. But that's not really the case for equities, for energies markets. It's a very double-sided picture. So you can trend through London, and then you get to what I call the post-NY cut, and everything just turns around and then wipes everything as you go into the euro close. We saw that happening on Thursday, I believe. Yeah, so Thursday. I was on Fast Markets, and we were, kind of hypothesizing about crude oil. I didn't really jump on that. I was being tortured by copper on Thursday. And so I was like, okay, well, we might get the reversal. I'm not really in favor of short there. And what happened? It literally wiped out the entirety of the trend down that we have had up to that point. So be very careful about post-NY cut into the euro close time period, the 90 minutes when reversals are very, very likely on energies. That to a degree goes for natural gas as well, although I found that natural gas tends to run late. So it almost kind of waits until the euro close and then starts to turn around. And if it is going to do like a failed auction or anything like that, it will do it closer to 3 p.m., so closer to that 9 a.m. Central NY cut. What is NY cut? It is a Forex option expiry that happens every day for New York 10 a.m., which is 9 a.m. Central, which is 3 p.m. UK time. Why is it important? Because crude oil, energies markets, they're generally Forex linked. So there is a currency for crude oil, that's Canadian dollar. And then whenever there's a large option expiry in the Canadian dollar, that has a knock-on effect in Forex linked products like commodities. And similarly, you have Australian dollar that's connected to gold in the same way. So that is why you see extra volume, harsh reversals, and everything just goes straight to pan, as British like to say, the English like to say here. All right, let's get back to metals. Let's have a look at platinum. We'll have a look at copper as well, but copper had that one kind of big day. So if I'm going to trade copper, I think I should probably wait until it's like a CPI or a PPI release from the States. It tends to be more reactive, or maybe if we get some news. What am I doing here? I'm trying to get a weekly chart. That's right. All right, platinum, also very bullish. It took its time. Like, look at this. Like, this almost looked like a supply and demand compression to me. But instead of resolving to the downside, it just kind of carried on higher. So volume has stayed remarkably consistent throughout that. Because it should have seen, at least some sort of a fall off in volume. But no, it's just been gradually building momentum to the upside. And it just carried on. The line that I have on here is 16 EMA line. But that's not really that relevant at the moment. Oh, opening with a gap for Sunday. And then just immediately screaming higher. Just lovely. Lovely. Let's go down to the intraday time frame. Overnight high, similar how I approach gold, I approach platinum in a very, very similar way. So the first thing that I will be looking for is that liquidity grab and a reversal. So right now it's just establishing overnight high, overnight low. Obviously it's going to be above the value area from yesterday and quite far out as well, so that's not really that relevant today. And the average daily range is also already done. Just looking at my other platform. So yeah, do we have any meaningful, because when things start to get a little bit skewy to the upside like that, you tend to only have value looking at the actual options chain positioning, because everything else is just gone. That's another use for the options chain. Normal levels, no nothing. And if you get yourself into a situation of now what? Options chain. I mean, look, some days if you look at just the end of day levels and then you come to the next day, even that is just completely gone. Like all of the levels from yesterday are just, you know, so far away. But platinum hasn't done that just yet. So looking at this options chain, it's a little bit more sane and just in favor of speed. I'm going to show you what they look like. So this is the mentor Q. So as you can see, this is the end of day levels from Friday, right? So core resistance and a gamma wall was very reactive. So that is exactly where the high happened. And it also happened exactly at London Open, the actual London session open. So some of the levels that I might want to look at is GEX2, located at 1620. And then failing that, if it kind of starts to go into a reversal, 1600 is GEX1. Then we have another stabilizer level much lower, 1575. Are we going to get there? I'm not so sure. Implied volatility tells us that there is room down to 1561. And to the upside, the implied volatility is already exceeded. Implied volatility high and low, they're very similar to my ADR high and low. In fact, a lot of the days, they are literally just at the same point, which is crazy. Let's see, my sister is in chat. Apparently her age is catching up to her. I don't know. I know my age is catching up to me. Thomas says, looks so manipulated. Which part? Because market makers are the ones who usually hedge against the moves. I don't know what's manipulated about it. The fact that the options levels work, is that manipulation or is that just market mechanics? Because to me, it's market mechanics. I don't know why we always have to look for the conspiracy theories. And it's like, oh, it's so manipulated. Mate, all of the markets are manipulated. It's like, if you think they're not, like, oh, yeah, Bitcoin. Really? Bitcoin is controlled by a few whales in crypto. Is that not manipulation? I would argue that that's bigger manipulation than whatever they're trying to do elsewhere. But hey, we could be wrong, right? So yeah. And I mean, should we look at copper? Should we look at copper, even though it's been really dead? We had one good day, and then nothing. So copper levels, it's kind of looking bullish, isn't it? But it's less bullish than some of the other options out there. So let's have a look at copper on the large time frame. But yeah, for me, platinum in a similar situation would be looking for stabilizer levels from the options chain in this case. Simply because we're so far away from everything else. You know, we jumped at the open. I mean, the most ideal situation here would be if we go all the way down to the overnight low, do a liquidity grab, and then it goes back up. Is that too much of an ambitious target? Maybe. We'll see what LME wants to do. It's we've got 5 minutes until LME starts, so we shall see. We shall see. Yeah, so when it comes to copper, let's have a look at bird's eye view. Let's do micro copper. Because copper is pretty expensive. Copper is $12.50 per tick on the full contract. Exactly the same as ES. So yeah, looking a bit bullish. It did a classic attempted first try of the low volume nodes, but now the rest of it is not really continuing down. In fact, we had some passive buying wicks, and so far it has been quite resilient today. We have an overnight high at 82.20. For 82.20. And then let's fish for the Asia low. There it is. Okay. Or overnight low, however you want to call it. Let's mark this up as well. Now today I'm going to try running one of the bots on just like 1 micro to see whether everything is working properly. And the reason why I'm going to do just 1 micro is because it's going to be on the live account. So yeah, if something goes wrong, I'm going to have to just cut it, go back to demo, see what went wrong. But yeah, it should be an exciting week for me. Right, so where are the value areas? So look. For COMEX values, again, I use LME Open, and I do look at the profile for the LME, but I also look at COMEX because this product is quite active for both. So New York Friday value high for 75.95. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to do coordinates. Change the colors. And if we ever manage to get the opportunity to just draw like a line through the API, that would also make my day. Because then I could even get a string from somewhere else and then just pop it in there. Value low for COMEX, 71.45. So see how there's no, most of you sit down and then you just start smashing buttons like they're going out of fashion. I don't do that. I literally sit there, I observe, put my levels in, and then I just see how the market is actually behaving around them. I don't know whether I'll be trading copper today. We'll see. Like I said, this is a good move, but it could be that we don't actually get too much movement until COMEX. It is Monday, so things tend to be a little bit quieter for London and New York. Don't ask me why. Maybe they're hungover. I don't know. Yeah. What is the crime says? I think the Forex market is the lesser of the market manipulation. Currently, markets have $4 trillion. The reason why the forex market is not easier or tougher to manipulate is not the size of it. It's because it's a market where there is no central exchange. And what does that specifically mean? It means that a lot of the transactions that eventually go into the pricing of something, they're actually done in resorts, on cruise ships, at any money exchange that you see on the street. All of that is forex transactions, right? All of it. But to say that it's not manipulated, that is actually a grave misunderstanding of the forex market. Why? Because the central banks directly control devaluation, or so basically depreciation or appreciation of the country's currency. So it is arguably one of the most manipulated products because of the central banks and the rate decisions and everything. What do you think that is? That is all manipulation of the price. The most famous and most extreme version of this was a Swiss franc. Back in January 2015, I was in the office. I was trading back then. So what happened? Well, for many, many years, Swiss franc was pegged to a certain price point. So for years, the price never went below it. It was literally like touching it, and then they would buy it. Touching it, and they would buy it. Forex pair, right? Forex pair. Swiss franc versus US dollar. And then on one morning, pretty early it was, the S&P just came out unannounced, completely unannounced. There was nothing on the calendar. And they just came out to announce that they're removing the floor. This resulted in a currency falling 40% on the day and then recovering about 30% after the markets were reopened. Because what happened? Everything smashed down, and every broker, they got a little bit complacent. You know, back in those days, everybody was under the impression on the brokerage side that it's like, oh yeah, everybody's losing. So why do we need to maintain market neutrality? You don't. That was obviously not the right call to do. So naturally, a lot of Forex people went completely bust. Purely because of that. So to say the Forex market is not manipulated, nothing further than the truth. Okay? So be careful with those sort of, tinfoil hat moments. And it's like, oh, Forex because it was 4 trillion. Nobody cares. It's like if something happens and the central bank decides to do something, they're the ones that have the most power of the value of the country's currency, if that makes sense. So yeah. But this just says, happy I tuned in. Between you and Dakota, I get my fix. Welcome, welcome. I wish that I could stay awake for Dakota. I really do, but that is very, very late. It's like 1:30 in the morning. And I go to bed about 10, and then I try to fall asleep by 11:30. Steve Witt says, I remember that day. A friend was on the wrong side of that, and his account got wiped out. Yeah, so in the aftermath, I actually had some friends who were in positions at that point, and some of them were trading Swiss franc. One guy had a negative balance. This is just the power of leverage, or the danger of leverage that you need to be aware of. For all leverage, but those disclaimers that we put, like the Bruno disclaimer in the beginning of the chat? Well, that's why, because leverage products of any sort, they are incredibly helpful, but once things go wrong, they're actually very, very dangerous. So the problem with the S&P fiasco back in 2015 is that the full leverage of the accounts suddenly came to fruition in clients' accounts. And some people had like negative balances. I know one guy had like 2 million down. Luckily, everybody who was involved in that, they forgave negative balances because obviously it was their fault. But yeah, it was an interesting day where everybody realized just how manipulated Forex actually is. So, careful with those sorts of statements, man. Every market is manipulated. You know, you just to think that they are not, I think, is very naive. And it's a good thing they are, because we can actually learn how they manipulate and then go trade with them, right? You don't have to trade against them. It's I think it's a misconception to start thinking how I'm going to beat the market. It's like, what, with your 1 micro in a combine? Yeah, I'm sure that's going to have a vast impact. And I mean, even if you trade 15 lots, it's just like such small fish. Even if you trade 15 lots in a live account, it's nothing. It's nothing. You're like a small drop in the sea of institutional size. So, you know, we don't want to beat the market makers. We don't want to complain that things are manipulated and then use that as an excuse to not get better. We want to observe, find data, find things that happen nearly every single day. Doesn't mean that you will always be successful. This is where risk control comes in. But you will have a very good idea of what went wrong on the day. Like, for example, let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm looking to short copper for whatever reason. So I say to myself, what is the highest probability setup here? Well, I know that copper likes to do a liquidity grab, either above or below Asia high, and then reverse. It's a high probability setup. But let's say I'm wrong. Let's say that they do a fake out, come back into the range, and then eventually push it outside of the Asia high. What happens then? I lose my mind. I start to flip and flop like a fish out of water. Or do I just say, I'm going to try a long because now we went above Asia high. So therefore that liquidity sweep was really a liquidity grab. Sorry, liquidity grab was a liquidity sweep. So now we're going higher. And if that one doesn't work out, it's not that the market didn't do what it's supposed to do. The market is doing whatever it wants to, right? It is up to us to go, it's time to stop, or maybe just stop at like 3 attempts. And then go, could I have done this better? What did I do wrong, if anything? And if you did nothing wrong, you tried 2 legitimate setups, but they just didn't work, maybe you can have a look at the size of your stops. It's like, well, was the stop loss maybe too small? Outside of that, if the answer to that is no, it wasn't too small, it should have handled a whipsaw. Maybe there was an outlier event. Maybe something happened. Maybe copper whipped massively. Like, we've seen it do this. Like, even the other day, like, it did a massive jump. Look at it. Huge jump. That's what seduced me to think that COMEX is going to be like super nice to trade. And then unfortunately we got to, well, this is COMEX. This is the range that we were stuck in. So by the time that COMEX started trading, everybody was just like, meh. So on those days, no matter what setup you try, there's nothing you can do. You can just take it on the chin and just go, okay, thank you, next. Turn into Ariana Grande and go, thank you, next. Don't let it, eat you up. Yeah, Shay Hughes says, if someone once said, if you think the markets are rigged, then play the rigging. Beautiful saying. That's my that's my motto as a trader. Bot Sister says, I bought at 6 p.m. M&Q, MGC, and MES, closed all those trades before bed. 379 with small lots, exactly. I like candlestick patterns on higher time frames. Yep, they're amazing. All right, let me see if I've missed anything. How is LME and COMEX correlated? They're not. They're 2 different exchanges, Joe says. Joe is asking. So LME is London Metal Exchange. And you can see just a little bit of a squiggle in the micro. Maybe we might be able to look at the slight increase in volume. So LME opened about 10 minutes ago. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for a 5-minute chart here. Yeah, so on a smaller time frame. So we had this slight push, and then your classic, we do nothing until LME. So now we have a little push. This is wrong. Hold on. Or maybe it's not. Hold on. Let me just see what bloody levels I have here. Okay, where is it? All the way down here. Of course, I did all my drawings on a micro, didn't I? But for volume, we really need the full contract. Okay, so, and can you see me? Let me just check that. Yeah, you can see this volume. So look at this jump in volume suddenly. It's like LME, reopening, ding. Now there are times of the day when LME copper actually trades. So just gonna, because if you don't know anything about LME, they have 5-minute increments per metal. And even though the volume does come up, the biggest volume is usually seen during the 5-minute actual trading of copper. And then they have the curb, which is towards the lunchtime. So interestingly, LME Select, that's the electronic version of LME. That's something new that they actually established during COVID. So that's something that I am not really that familiar with. I can learn, and you always have to learn. But yeah, so that's traded. LME Select is really active from 1 p.m. till 7 p.m. London time. And then 1 a.m. all the way to 7 p.m. London time. So it basically runs all the way through Asia. But that is not the open outcry side of things. Open outcry is from 11:40 a.m. London time till 5 p.m., which is why we're doing these moves of the show to be closer to that time. So copper, 5-minute increments. Let me just see. If I can find the exact time when copper trades. Yeah, so it's from my noon up until 5 minutes past. So in about 7 minutes, you have whole 5 minutes to trade copper. But what happens is that you have this synergy of LME open, slight volume increase. Then you have the LME Select that also trades overnight. You have Asia that trades copper quite a bit. And then you get this 5-minute increment. But then right after that, you will get COMEX open in about 40 minutes from that point. You have pre-market for COMEX, then you have main COMEX. So all of that kind of starts to build from about 11:40 from the LME open. So it's a very important time to already sit there and try to figure out what's happening. Now, another thing about the LME is that they have the curb trading. And the curb trading is usually from 1:25 p.m. my time until 1:35 p.m. So there's basically, as COMEX is opening, the curb trading is also happening. What's curb trading? It means that they trade all of the metals in that 10-minute period. And then they break for the first session. And then the second session begins with curb trading, interestingly. No, it doesn't. Does it begin? No, it doesn't begin. So then you have the second time of day for copper, which is 3:10. Oh, obviously for 5 minutes. What's that time of day? Well, it's the post-NY cut. This is why frequently you will see copper turn around for that later part of the session. And then usually it just kind of stays in the same direction until 5 p.m. London time when they close. But before they close, they have a longer extended curve trading where all of the metals are being traded from 350 up to the end of the exchange. So yeah. And copper actually ceases to actively trade 10 minutes before the close. So all of those timings will impact how copper moves and breathes. But yeah, we still need some catalysts for copper. So I'm not sure whether we're going to get that. But it's on my watch list. It's certainly on my watch list. So yeah, Joe, they're not correlated, but they are sort of have a relationship where one thing flows into the next, All right. Should we have a look at silver? Silver is very correlated to gold. Even though it's a different metal. Let's get rid of these. Okay. Very bullish. To me, silver looks more bullish on the weekly than gold. Same thing on the daily chart. It's just screaming up. Will we hit 50 this week? Sweepstakes. Isn't that what binary options are? Copper. Under or over? I suppose we play a version of binary options, but at the end of the day, you know, Power Hour, when they say under or over, that's effectively binary options. 4-hour chart looking a little less crazy. So we did not make a new higher high from London. That's interesting. And just like the other metals, so Asia high, Asia low, or overnight high, overnight low is very important. So this was the low. Let me drag this over. Interesting that last week, this Asia low was the average daily range high at some point. Funny confluences there. All right, let me just drag silver out. Let me reuse one of these. Okay. Yeah, very similar outlook to gold. ADR already exhausted. It was at 47,262. But I would be looking for the similar thing, right? Some kind of a pullback. And then maybe some more buying to occur. And if that doesn't happen, maybe I'll find a different setup. You know, again, if we go much lower, then we maybe retest VWAP from the bottom end, from the arse end. Perhaps there might be a short there, but for now, looking very bullish. So you don't want to fight it until that changes. And then if MGI tells you differently, then you change your mind. But at the moment, fighting this would be a futile exercise. So yeah, metals all looking pretty strong still. It's a little bit crazy. Let's have a look at heating oil. Now, to give you context with this, and by the way, I'm not seeing any setups just yet, so we're not going over the highs. Let me just track gold, just in case. If we are going over the highs, I don't want it because it's too high up for me, personally. I don't see a profit margin in the areas where we are at right now. So really I would need gold and other metals to actually have a pretty decent pullback. I can see gold kind of going to 38.50 and then trying to go back, but then ultimately losing steam and pushing it back into yet another all-time high. That is something that happens a lot on gold. Just realized something. Why? Oh no, that's okay. No, I didn't realize anything. Yeah, so let me split the chart here in three. Why in three? Because I want to show you the relationship between RBOB, heating oil, and crude oil. So let's do it in order. So crude oil, gasoline futures, our Robert, as we like to call it, and heating oil. And we're going to go to the daily chart. Everywhere. For now, I just want you to focus only on price action. And you'll see how cool these three products are. So keep in mind that crude oil is the quieter of the three. RBOB is kind of the NQ of the energies markets. And heating oil is kind of in the middle. I quite like heating oil. The only problem I have with it is so thin. So when you trade it on the live, like if you even execute one position, you sometimes need to wait quite a long time for it to fill. And you're like, am I in? Am I in? No. Am I in? Am I in? And then suddenly it fills it. You're like, oh, okay, I'm in. Oh, there's a tough 15 seconds. But I do love the way it moves. Like once you obtain a position, everything's great. So if you look at the price action, it's really similar across the board, right? Really similar with some minor differences, but only very minor. So you see the doji on crude oil, but you see a small bear candle on heating oil. And then you see RBOB that doesn't have a doji at all because it's crazier than the other two. However, it does have a selling wick, and all three of them have a degree of a selling wick. So that is a huge correlation. If we look at what's happening before then, so we had 1, 2, 3 big green candles on crude oil and heating oil, but 3 spiky candles, still up, but a bit spiky. So again, speaks to the craziness of RBOB. That's why I like to call it the NQ of the energies markets, because it's like when it starts to whip around, it's not as bad as NQ, but it generally has about 400 to 500 ticks of average daily range. So it's a lovely product. Dangerous, but when it's behaving, it is beautiful. Right, let me try and get back to chat here, because this one just a bit of a workaround. Are you going to be live until comics? No, sadly not. We have the main broadcast that starts in about an hour 20. And I'm only going to be here for another 25 minutes, and then that's it. So my show is usually 90 minutes, so you can plan. But yeah, I am here to cover the metal markets. And for metal markets, you really need to start a little bit earlier in the day. Because if you start at COMEX and you don't have levels or anything, you're just like, And very frequently you can miss some really nice setups that can develop for the London Metal Exchange Open. Let's go back to the metals. So let's go MGC, MHG, and maybe platinum. Platinum or silver, what do you reckon? Platinum is a little different. Where's the platinum? So this is the daily chart of recent moves. Now these two are all-time highs. Platinum doesn't have a micro, by the way, or at least no one trades it. Maybe there is a micro, but you know, it'll be just like one singular person going, we want micro. But partly is because it's cheaper, so it's $5 per tick rather than 10 and $12.50. But yeah, so metals all looking pretty strong. Copper is the only one that had that big smash down. So out of all of these, if I was going to long something, I would be longing copper. If it, if it starts moving and if we actually pick up in some speed. I do love trading copper in and around CPI and PPI weeks because there's a lot of movement. Outside of that, we need to wait until some more colder weather. Why? Because copper is used in many heating elements. So there's a natural increased demand for physical copper, which gets reflected in the supply and demand chain. Beth says, you switched to minis for a true volume read. Yes. Is the volume on micros not truly valid? So I believe it isn't, and here's why. If you look at commercial hedgers, if you look at hedge funds, institutions, do you think they're going to trade micros? Like, we absolutely have market makers that operate in the micros. And actually, one of the big issues that we had when micros first came out was that nobody was really trading them. So you would have very little volume in micros, and then suddenly the chart would just kind of teleport to another price. Why? Because it was tracking the main product. It was tracking the mini. And even though that has changed, so now there are dedicated market makers that generate liquidity in the micros themselves, the true positioning, especially when it comes to commercial hedgers, is still in the minis. So whenever I'm doing minis versus micros and I want to do volume analysis, I will not do that on a micro. Even though they will sort of resemble it, some of the specific setups that I look for this time of the day, for example, the stop, run, and reverse type setups, ideally to be with the trend, you won't really see them that well on a micro. So let me just go to full gold and micro gold. And we're going to look at the 5-minute chart. So kind of looks similar, right? Kind of looks similar. But on both of these charts, I actually have the 20 simple moving average across the volume bars. Can you see that? Hold on. Give me just a second. Let me remove my face for a second, okay? Just to illustrate this properly. So now we have micro on the left and we have full mini on the right. Look at how much more consistent the full contract is. This one a bit spiky, right? Have a lot more gaps. They kind of follow each other, but at the same time, I would trust this volume here more. And on the micro, it looks like there's so much volume on the approach to the previous high. Whereas on the full contract, I would say that's not the case. I would say there was just like a temporary push and then nothing. So the volume has not grown whilst that was happening. And there was a lot less of it because we were closer to the sideways volume, really, 20 SMA. So to me, especially for the times of me looking for those liquidity grabs, I find that a lot of the times micro just won't have the same thing. They will be like, oh yeah, we sort of went higher, but then the actual spike would be much larger in the original contract in volume, but maybe not so much in price, interestingly. Whereas micros, because they're a derivative of a derivative, they will actually exaggerate the price side of things, but the volume might not be nearly as big. So to me, that never made much sense. So I was like, that's not what I'm looking for. So every time I do volume analysis on a low time frame, I will always reference the mini. Andre is asking me, am I from Netherlands? No, I am originally from Belgrade, Serbia. I've lived in London now for over 20 years and then some. And at this point, I've probably been in London longer than I've been in my own country, just about. And no, I'm not 12, I'm not 25, I'm not even 30. I'll be 45 soon. NASDAQ quiz says, hey, Deeyana, just passing by to drop a like. Thank you, man. Good to see you. And it says, have a great week in the markets. Yes. Tom is asking me what time does the stream start. Well, right now we're trying to move to this new time slot. It used to start like super early in the morning, but that was if we were going to do DAX. Now, DAX never really came, and we just decided that it would be better to move this section slightly later in the day and to actually start covering LME and to basically call it something else as well. So there will be more information as the day goes on. So we should be okay. But yeah. Oh, John Hoagland. Hold on. Haugen joined us. Oh my goodness. Sorry, man, I didn't see you there because I'm in a little office space. So I'm having a power cut today, so it's annoying. So John is saying, love the new time. I get to see you every day. That's beautiful. Love that. So yeah, we should have more information. We're literally lacking one document before we can push everything out as a new rebrand. Santa says, thanks for that info in regards to the volume analysis and micro versus mini. It just made the whole morning worthwhile. I've noticed similar behavior in equities. Yeah, absolutely. Santa says, this also explains the behavior of my volume profile bot on MGCM and QNMES. Back to the backtesting. Yeah, so if I am using, like I do have one of the bots that looks at volume, but it's a little bit tricky because what I'm trying to do there is to only use the full contract. But since now I'm kind of trying to move it into the live account, which is very exciting but very scary, I have to go to micros at first just to make sure nothing disastrous happens. So, yeah. I am probably going to switch off the volume side of things just for the beginning, right? And then once I decide that that's kind of safe, I might go back to the full volume. But I just don't trust volume and micros. And we have Hoag here. Hoag, what is your thought on this volume thing? Because it's to me, it's always been a little bit mad. And then watching micros develop over the years, it's like, okay, well, now it's sort of similar, but I don't know. I still find that there's some weird volumes in micros sometimes, and then you look at the price and you're like, that doesn't make much sense. Like, what? But you look at the mini and you're like, oh, okay. Deeyana111 says, first time watcher, great and probably knowledgeable. Thank you. I appreciate that. Welcome. Good to see you here. Sana says, I've been considering doing analysis on full fat contracts and executing micro. Yeah, that is what I do. So I would never just look at the mini micro and just go, that's it. I always look at the full contract. I have a whole chart where I only look at the full contract. And then whatever I want to do, I will execute in the micros if necessary. And it just works. To me, it just works. And also, looking at micro options, like Does that even exist? Like, I don't know, maybe. I haven't really noticed much volume in micro options. So, if I'm looking at the open interest in the options chain, am I going to look at micros or am I going to look at the mini? I want to look at where the big boys are, We'll peek into their office and go, what are you up to? All right, push, big push. Now this will be partly pre-market for COMEX, but also LME. This is now LME development. Let's see what copper is doing, if anything. Yeah, copper is following. Here we are. Wakey, wakey. So metals have woken up. Somebody had a long weekend. Yeah, so Hogue says, any analysis I do comes from the mini or big contracts. The real other time frame traders, so OTF is other time frame, they're trading the big contracts. Yeah, exactly. Micros are all speculators. Exactly. So do we want to go to speculators? Do we want to trust each other? It's like, oh, which combine number are you on? Oh, I don't know, 230. It's like, no, we want to go to the big boys that are like, we do this, so we have certain inventory to fill. Like, we have to hedge because the airline company has told us to buy this much of crude oil and to lock in the contracts. They're not going to go to micros, obviously. All right, so that's the time, 12:15 on a Monday. They obviously have their espressos. They're like, let's trade. So let's see what copper actually does. So I'm going to somehow try and keep an eye on all of these. So let's maybe go to a 4. And again, my screen is a little bit compressed because I'm on a little micro screen. I mean, it's not that micro. It's 14 inches, but it's not enough space. Now let's go to 30 minutes there. I always like to have bigger. So this is usually how I like to have my screen. It's not very pretty for the stream, but generally I will have one full contract, one mini, and then if I want to do anything volume-wise, like, for example, I'm looking at this overnight high now. I will be referencing the full contract. So that's how that looks. So full contracts and then micros. So one thing that I would like to see copper do, because it's the only one that's low enough to warrant maybe a breakout, but the first order of business would be the liquidity grab above this former Asia high. And actually this is now higher because we've maybe moved that. Maybe I moved that when I was like doing the charts. Can I lock it? Can I lock it? Yes, I can. Okay, there we go. Locked and loaded. All right, so I'm looking for copper to tag this Asia high. And then I would want to see a bit of an exhaustion volume that will show up as a spike and then a return into that range. That is the first setup that I usually do on any metal that I'm trying to trade. So a couple of things need to happen. We need to bust through the high like gold is doing right now. And then it needs to be followed by volume that is at least 1.7 times bigger than all the surrounding candles. So we have that as well. The only thing that's keeping me outside of gold shorts is the fact that this is an all-time high. It's like, do I want to be the lunatic who shorts the all-time highs? I'm not that brave. I'm pretty crazy, but I'm not that crazy. Jay Huffo says, hi D, it's a lot easier to absorb and listen to the great experience this time of day, not so much other noise. Yeah. Sarah says, I've been worried that this wouldn't work due to a difference in magnitude for prices movement, especially NQ, but I would just avoid the cracked. Yes. You and me. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we've got another 10 minutes here. Copper's still nowhere really close to that overnight high. But yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna be the one to short gold today. Maybe if we fall quite a bit, maybe I'll kind of catch it on some sort of pullback, but no. To me, gold is just too high up. And yeah, it might carry on higher. Do I really want to be a breakout trader that bought the all-time high? Even if it works, it just goes against every grain in my body to do that. As a mean reversion trader, as somebody who likes pullbacks, maybe if we opened somewhere closer to the value high for COMEX, but this is so high. I just can't do it. So yeah, I have to be patient here. So I have to wait for maybe copper, maybe have a look at crude oil later on. But yeah. Because, even if I kind of go into a breakout trade and let's say that I short this, let's say I am a lunatic and I short it, but it goes higher, then I'm going to look like the biggest muppet, right? And then people will be like, yeah, T-Tuck. and then if I do a breakout, but then it turns around on me and I want to be long and that doesn't work, that's going to make me look like a muppet as well. So it's like, don't want to buy all-time high. Don't really want to short this either. I think I just need to, how did Hope put it once? Hands on my butt and then wait until something actually tells me a story and then it becomes obvious. Right now, nothing is particularly obvious. Usually, like I said, the break of the overnight high and a reversal is something that I will get involved with, but not in the all-time high. It's just like so difficult. Daniel, I have the Ace of Zenbook Duo. Yes, you were here when I was telling you my setup. I'm actually only on the Zenbook Duo, so I don't have the extra 2 screens because I'm only going to be here for like this time of the day that I'm going to go home, and because we're not going to have electricity until 3:30, I may not be able to trade until then because I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of just clicking buttons on a laptop because I find that it doesn't quite, like I want to have a mouse, but I didn't bring the mouse with me today. Typical. Yeah, the office that I'm in now is literally like 9 minutes drive from my house. And bizarrely, it's somebody who sells fires, like fire stoves and stuff, and fireplaces, and also pet food. So I kind of told him about my woes. And he was like, oh, you can come use my office here. So yeah, this is one of his spare offices, which is pretty lovely. I mean, I didn't expect that. It was amazing. NQ, copper, gold, and everything at the high. Trader Ken says, what could go wrong? So yeah, Daniel, I have the Asus Duo. So I don't know why you put that comment because that is my setup. I can show you my setup today. Post it on Twitter. So let's do that. Very, very simple. Super simple. Don't know when you're going to be able to see this. Because, why does that have lines? It's strange. Very strange. Hold on. Why is that picking up lines? I'm not sure. It's all like, let's see if I can somehow make it better. Does the black screen make it better? There you go. So I'm going to post that on Twitter. Much simpler than my monstrosity with 2 extra streams the other day. But that was because I was spending the entire day in London because my dog was getting spayed. And because I live so far out now, there's no point for me to kind of drive for 2 hours to get to London because there's traffic as well. And then drive back for an hour and a half, all through like rush hour. And then drive yet again. So I just did a co-working space. Smaller setup today. While the power cut is on in my house. All right, so gold is pushing higher. So be it. The light that I have today is different as well, and I didn't put it into the... Just realized I didn't put it into the whole screen. Oh, let's do that again. I'm not a very good photographer today, am I? Okay. We'll get this right someday, this picture taking business. I'm such a Gen X when it comes to that. It's like, what do you mean we're doing therapy? I used to do selfies. I absolutely hate them now. All right, so smaller setup for today. Well, the parka is on at my house. And then we're going to finish the stream in about 3 minutes. So we, if you got any more questions, now will be the time to ask them because we're going to run out of time in a minute. Let's see. So yeah, Daniel, in a minute, this thing should, yeah. So the screen that you see on the side and another side that's just in this office, but my laptop is the Asus Duo ZenBook. So yeah. I mean, even with the other 2 screens, the whole setup is so light, so light. This is gorgeous. All right, I'm back to my stream, if I can find it. It's my stream. There it is. Okay. Is Topstep making you do hybrid work for now? No, it has nothing to do with hybrid. Topstep is still fully remote. Most of us are fully remote, even those who are in Chicago, like Hoagland. John works from his home. You know, there's no real need to be in the office very often. But for me, it's a power cut. So I live out in the sticks now. And unfortunately, what's happened to this area is that a lot of new people have kind of moved in. And because now everybody has, you know, the power grid here is probably from the 60s or something. And now everybody has flat screens, Wi-Fi's, air fryers, microwaves, like a whole bunch of stuff that is just putting so much strain onto the existing infrastructure. So since we moved here, we've had a few power cuts. They're always scheduled. One was unscheduled in the middle of the night, but the rest of them are all scheduled. However, they're trying to make it better. And because of that, I have to occasionally come to an office. But I'm actually seriously considering getting like a power generator or something and just running that if this continues to happen. yeah. All right, so that will be it for today. If we are going ahead with the new time, you will get that information later on. But as soon as I know, I will also post it on my Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, please start following me. I do post a lot of random things over there, so I do apologize in advance. But yeah, because I just can't really be bothered with Twitter anymore. I think it's very toxic. However, every so often, if there's anything useful for you to find out about the stream, or, you know, an interesting thing that's happened in my life, like my dog found a stick or something, definitely go and follow me. Anyways, that'll be all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, keep an eye out on the main broadcast and on my own Twitter posts for the new time, or whether it's going to be old time. I don't know. We'll know as the day progresses. Have a great day. Try to lock out those risk settings before you do anything. So make sure you go into your risk settings, you know, these little things here, and then set your daily loss limits, set your symbol blocks, set your contract limits. So don't give me that excuse as, oh God, I traded NQ because I went on tilt. Great. So just put a symbol block, and then the system won't allow you to trade anything else, okay? So do that and make sure that you use the lockout settings to prevent you from disasters and save you from yourself. I'm going to leave you with that thought for the day. Happy Monday, brand new week. Let's go. Have a great day.